개발자 TV.
All right, so let's quickly go over some quick troubleshooting tips and tricks. And this is not really a workflow per se, but it is a really good framework for troubleshooting parts of your app that may not work the way that you intended. And the first one is really just to define the problem, right? And this is oftentimes a lot harder to do than it seems. It's a whole lot easier said than done. And while problems initially can crop up for a variety of reasons, a lot of people try to focus on the reason before they actually clearly define what the issue is. What is actually going wrong? What's the intended result that should be taking place in your app? So really just defining the problem, writing it down. You know, if you're using a project management software, making a bug ticket, right? That can help you really think about what the problem is and writing it down in a very concise and clearly, clear to understand way. And then once you've defined the problem, it usually helps to retrace the workflow. So for example, in your app, if you have, a user sign-in flow or something, and for some reason the user can't get to the home screen for some reason, right? You may want to retrace the user's process of going through your app. How do they get to where you want them to get to, right? And following that path, sometimes backwards, sometimes forwards, can really help you identify those problems. And a good tip here is to use the screen connections that are actually in your app. And we'll look at some more troubleshooting steps as we get a little bit further into it and how to identify some of those things. But really following the workflow through the app is extremely helpful in identifying problems. The third one, and this is by far the most important when you're troubleshooting anything, not just an app, right, is to change just one thing at a time, right, and keep track of what you've changed. And the reason for this is because if you go in there and you make a bunch of tweaks and change a bunch of things that you think might be wrong with it, if it does end up fixing it, you're not exactly sure what it was that you changed that made the difference, right? So it really helps to just change one small thing, do a quick test, see if it's improved. If it hasn't improved, maybe revert the change and try something else, right? That way you're not making massive amounts of changes to your app that have no effect on the result. And it also helps you pinpoint exactly what the problem was after you've solved it. So it's critically important to change just one thing at a time. You know, write down what you tried, what worked, what didn't work, those types of things. This is almost the most essential and most important rule when troubleshooting, right? Is to just try one thing that you think might be wrong. If it doesn't fix it, revert it and try something else, right? The fourth one is to try and find a working example that may already exist, right? Maybe there's elements of an example that you can copy and move over to your app. Maybe someone else has already done this and you just need to kind of find or ask around if there are maybe already examples of this being used or implemented. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with finding something that already exists. In fact, in an actual development situation, this happens quite frequently, right? You have sites like Stack Exchange and GitHub where people are constantly copying snippets of code and copying portions of other projects to make their own. And the same thing can be true in Adalo, right? You can find examples of Adalo apps that may already do what you're wanting to do. And then the last one is just ask for help, right? There's no shame in asking for help whatsoever. We have a community forum that is excellent for this, right? You can go in and ask other more experienced makers what it is that they are doing, how they're doing it. You can post your problems in there, all that sort of stuff. And most of the time you'll find a pretty quick solution to your answer there. The other one is our help docs. Our help docs are a great way to find answers to a lot of different problems that you might have. There's some really good detailed information buried in there for those of you that like to read and watch videos and that type of thing. And the last one is just in this course, you can also ask for help, right? We talked a little bit about the Learners tab and the Discuss tab. You can always go in there and ask questions, discuss the projects that you're working on. And that is a great way to get past the problem that you're stuck on, right? And this one isn't written down, but by far the most important aspect of troubleshooting is grit, right? Having the grit and the perseverance to work through the problem. A lot of people, as soon as they encounter a problem, they just kind of give up. Don't be that person, right? Just keep working with it, keep trying, and I guarantee you that you'll feel way better having solved a problem than if you just encountered it and just kind of gave up, right? So there's something to be said for persevering through the bugs and through the problems that you may encounter in your app, right? That said, we will look at some more troubleshooting steps as they arise while we're building, but just keep this in mind for when you are working on your own apps in general. They're just a great toolkit to use for troubleshooting and identifying problems.